Well, welcome back to the Epic Investor Podcast. I am Rich Jarvis here with Jason and James, and we're here to talk about achieving freedom of purpose, and most importantly, the components that make it possible to do that. And we're going to share why it's been such a pivotal focus for us in our business and the foundation, and the why of everything that we do. So let's dive in. We want to celebrate. This is our first episode that we're recording.
Number 1.
So congratulations, guys. And I just want to take a moment to just say how grateful I am for each of you to be willing to do this, and for all of our listeners to go on this journey with us. Today, especially, we want to focus on the topic of what does it mean when we say freedom of purpose, and how do we achieve it? I want to talk about job versus calling, actually job versus career versus calling, and then go into what is passive income, kind of lay the groundwork there. What does it mean to free up time? And how does that relate to your freedom of purpose, but then ultimately tying it back into doing what you're meant to do and what you're called to do.
This is the mission, by the way, of Epic Capital Funds, is freedom of purpose.
It is. Everything we do is about helping our clients achieve their freedom of purpose. And oh, by the way, by way of introductions, we didn't introduce ourselves. So I'm Rich Jarvis.
Jason Morrell.
James Morrell.
I'm one of those farm boys from Idaho, and it started really early in life. My parents opened my first checking account when I was 6, and everything flowed through there. All school supplies, anything I needed, it had to flow through there so we could track, income and expenses. I didn't have an allowance, but I had a lot of chores, and then I was paid to do chores. But growing up on the farm, I started a hay hauling business. By the time I was 12, I had a $350 monthly payment to pay for the equipment. But I learned the law of the harvest. You work really hard all year and you harvest and you get the benefits from it. But really it was trading time for money. I was creating a job, and the only way I got paid is if I went out and did something. And so I think most people can relate to that, going out and trading time for money. And so what we want to do is kind of go from, creating a job for yourself. And sometimes I hear, aspiring accredited investors or investors that are looking at getting into real estate, and they essentially create a new job for themselves. And so we want to touch on that a little bit. But there's a difference between a job and a career. When you're creating a career, there's more meaning behind it. And then you take it to a step further. When you bring purpose into what you do, it changes it from a job or a career to a calling.
I feel like there's so few people out there that actually achieve that. And I wonder if it's because it's this norm anymore of, well, I'm supposed to go get a job, and I'm supposed to stick to the grind for 40 or 50 years until I'm able to retire because my 401k says I can. And it's unfortunate that that's the stigma, which I think at an early age, you said you were 12 when you had a $350 payment.
Yep.
Which is pretty unique, right? You kind of broke that mold early. And I think a lot of people are looking for the way to do that. They want to know how to get out of the rat race. They want to know how to get out of everybody tells me this is the path to success. And yet they see people achieve this, this calling stage. And I think that's the breakthrough, right? That's what everybody's looking for.
Go to college, get the degree, get the job. You're never really taught to, invest or learn about passive income. And that's what ultimately opens the door to those opportunities.
It'll come later.
Change.
It'll come later in life. Don't worry about it right now.
Yeah.
Which is
What a travesty, right?
All of a sudden you're 50.
Yeah.
Early on, we bought the game Cash Flow. Remember when it first came out? I mean, it was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, the whole concept is to buy assets which put money in your pocket versus buy liabilities that take money out of your pocket. It's not about what you choose to do for your career. It's what you do with the money you make. And, buying assets versus liabilities, I think it really comes down to, it's that simple. I think the trap is trading hard-earned dollars for expenses. And if that's all you do, it's so difficult to get ahead. And so one of the things we want to talk about is, how do you break out of that social stigma or just being caught in that W-2 trap of just earning money to pay for expenses? One of the ways to do that is creating passive income. And we're recommending at least find 3 different sources outside of your W-2. It doesn't have to replace it right out of the gate. But as you start increasing those passive income sources and having it at least 3, eventually you can get to a point where that that changes and your passive income is greater than your W-2, you can essentially do what you're called to do.
You're not encouraging people to quit their job and start throwing money at investment opportunities and dive in deep, right? Like that would be irresponsible. But when you achieve a level of freedom, you know, and you get to this position of where you've found your calling in life and you've got all of the infrastructure under you to support that, you know, like there's the stress that kind of goes away. And if you quit your W-2 job and you start buying rental properties or you invest in a business, your stress just quadrupled, right? Because the stable income's gone. Again, I want to just reinforce your comment that it isn't go quit your job. It's 3 additional income streams on top of your stable bread and butter, family's protected, long-term plan is in place. Then you find the additional opportunities to accelerate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just talk about the different sources that you can go to that's outside of a W-2. I think one of the most common is rentals. You know, you go buy a small, you know, whether it's an Airbnb or a small house to rent, you know, you get that rental. So you have residential rentals. That can be anything from single family homes to multifamily to, you know, there's a lot of different strategies there. Commercial, so office space, you know, retail, whatever it might be. Storage, all of those different asset classes can create rents. Another way is earning interest, you know, lending money. I mean, there's been a lot of books over the years that are written about the richest man in Babylon, or, you know, how he uses money and he lends it because as a money lender, people are always in need of money. That's an easy way to start too, by getting that interest. And that can be savings accounts, CDs, everything from stocks that you can earn interest on, dividend stocks, for example, preferred stocks, money market, or actually lending itself. But other ones are dividends. You know, buy a business and get dividends from that business. The point we're trying to make, or at least I'm trying to make, is try to find 2 or 3 additional sources outside of your W-2 as a start.
Exactly.
What happens when you start getting other sources of income coming in? What does that do for your time?
Opens it up.
You'd hope,
Opens
right?
pathway. Yeah, you'd hope so. Right. Exactly. As long as you're not, again, as you mentioned, you're finding the right opportunities that allow you to not trade time for money. It's passive.
Exactly.
You don't have to be there on site working all the time, putting that labor in. You can be, you know, making money while you sleep, of course.
Have you noticed this in talking to investors where they'll come in and say, I'm so tired of investing in real estate because it's taking so much of their time.
Yeah, it's laborious.
Yeah, and it's interesting because they originally think of it as passive income, but they've created a new job is what they've done. And there's a lot of work that goes along with it. When you have a strategy, it's you want to do this while you're doing this. There has to be multiple components in that to make it a good strategy. And passive income alone, or when it turns into a new job, isn't truly passive income. It's just active income in a different form. Let's talk about freeing up time. You know, for those out there that are entrepreneurs or, you know, just starting out, I think the biggest key that I've learned, and I'd love to get your guys' take on this, is when you go out to start something new, a lot of times people have an idea that they have to do it all alone. Like I have an investor, you know, they have a great W-2 job. They've made great money. They have a fantastic career. They provided for their family, and they're just wanting to go to another level. And then they think they have to go out and do it all themselves. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say entrepreneurship is not solopreneurship.
I think that's the beauty of Epic Capital, the fact that our whole niche is partnering with operators who are great at what they do. And they allows us to stay in our own lanes and take things off our plate. We focus on what we do best and they do the same. And that creates a synergy and a team that is really powerful.
I had a mentor once that said, there are no gold stars for doing it yourself. And I often wonder, like, why do people do that? Why do they go down the road of, I got to do it on my own, or I've got to, it's almost like purgatory or whatever. They're like, it's like punishment. Like I chose to do this, so I should suffer. Mm-hmm. Or I want, you know, the spoils of this, so I should suffer through it. And yet I don't know where that comes from. I don't know why we have that mentality as we go through things. When you consider partnering with the right people, you don't have to use the word partnership as a true partner, but you get the right vendors, you get the right strategic alignments in place that alleviate it, and then you found your freedom. Whereas for whatever reason, we feel like we got to be in that trench all alone.
Yeah. I'm just curious, why do you think most people have this tendency that if they want to start real estate or go out and do businesses, that they feel like they have to do it themselves? Why do you think that is?
Just the need for control, I think. I think when you think you're in control, I'm going to invest in this fix and flip, for example, I'm going to manage it myself. You feel like you're in charge of the process. But as we always say, having that control doesn't mean less risk. If you can trust a team who knows what they're doing, that's going to be a much more successful outcome than you just saying, I'm going to fix and flip. And when you have no experience in real estate or management or all the problems that you have to address, that's a tough road to go down.
People are afraid of failure. And the more people that get involved with them, the more exposure they have to, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And so I've got a brother that did the same thing. He wanted to do it alone because he was afraid that if it didn't work, too many people would know, right? And yet you reduce your chances of success dramatically when you don't have the right seats on the bus. Mm-hmm. So I think failure, which again, you would think if I'm going to fail, I need to surround my table with people that are smarter than I am. But I think the fear of failure is what makes people want to keep it close.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. I think you're spot on. I think people, because of that fear of failing, think they have to do it alone, but then they set it up so it's very difficult to succeed.
Right. So
it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy that their chances of failure just go up because we're trying to do it alone when they were trying to avoid that to begin with.
Yeah.
It's one thing if someone wants to do something, a lot of times I've spoken with, whether it's a dentist or an orthodontist or other, even anyone in the medical field that does fantastic at what they do. And very bright. And it's not that they don't have the talent or ability to do something else. It's they don't have the time or experience under the belt for it. And if someone wants to transition and do something new, why don't we, we had this apprenticeship back in the day, right? Everyone apprenticed and you learned the trade as you went and gained more ability. And essentially that's what core teams are. You're bringing those experts in that are very good at what they do, lining them up, forming partnerships around them, and then learning from all of those things. And you guys have heard me say this before, the greatest teams in the world are not the greatest because of a lack of challenges or problems. They're the greatest because of their capacity to deal with them.
They actually overcome great challenges and problems.
Yeah, and when that's the story, right? We can't watch a movie about something that just everything goes right and nothing goes wrong, and at the end you just kind of be feeling like there wasn't any really
point.
Yeah, what was the point? And how do you pull resources? And business is about doing things with other people and other, relationships and bringing those in. And so I think that's a core tenet.
People should be more aware of the teams that they have around them, the lack thereof, or the decisions of who they've put around them as a strategic approach to achieving their goal, whatever that looks like, right? Whether it's growth or whether it's just stability or whether it's longevity, it's the team around them.
Well, let me ask a question. And really it's for all investors. Why are you wanting to invest? Are you wanting to invest so that you can spend more time doing something that you don't want to do? Or are you investing so you can improve your situation so you can actually do those things and free up your time so that you can do more, provide more opportunities for your family, or that line gets crossed?
We see it all the time, I feel like, with investors on the fix and flip side. If you really want to fix and flip because you like that process, you like managing it, you like being on site, it's for you. But if you're trying to create that passive income by being there on site, again, it's not passive. You're just
creating that job.
You're gonna end up hating.
Yeah. So what recommendation would you give to fix and flippers if that's what they want to do, to get out of that rut and bring more teams in so they can scale that?
Well, I think overall, it's just finding operators and teams kind of like ours where there is experience and there's that focus on, that substantial track record and core teams that have delivered. Otherwise, you're going to end up having to address those problems yourself. And if you don't have that experience, the odds of a successful project are going to go down pretty heavily. Yeah. So it's finding syndicators and teams who know what they're doing and have that track record is huge.
I can't help but think though that means you've got to buy the deal the right way in order to afford the right help. again, speaking about doing it alone, if you were to go down that road of fix and flipping on your own, you watch every HGTV show there is and you go for it and you buy it wrong. So now you don't have the room, in the profit that you were hoping to achieve. You end up hating that whole process, right? Whereas if you've got to buy it right to afford the right team to be put in place so that it is not your nightmare job, to see it through.
We talked about job versus career versus calling, the difference between trading time for money and then doing things that you're called to do, and the difference and impact that you can make there. Passive income, meaning creating 3 different sources of revenues outside of a W-2. And in all 3 of those are things that should free up time, not take more time. I'll share what goes through my mind when I say freedom of purpose, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on it. But for me, freedom of purpose, one, it's for those that understand first that, they have something that's really important in their life. It's not a process of trying to discover what your purpose is. It's for those that have a purpose. And so how do you achieve freedom of that purpose? And in order to do that, you have to free up your time so that you can do what you're called to do. In most cases, in the case that we're talking about, one of the ways to free up your time is to take away the financial burdens of life and providing opportunities for family. If that is taken care of, you can go out and do what's most important to you, whether it's your career, your job, or something philanthropic, or whatever it is that you're called to do. So I think freedom of purpose, that's one element, time. And then the other, not just having that freedom of time, but putting resources to work in a way that supports all of your endeavors. So it's not just freeing up your time just because it's covered, but it's having the resources to fund the purpose that you want to do to begin with. Thoughts?
I love it. I just think overall it comes down to, in life, freedom comes down to time and money. You don't have those 2 things, you're going to be stuck finding a second job through your investment, or working a second job late at night. It doesn't matter what it is. You have to be able to find ways to free up time and money. And if you don't, it's going to be a struggle. I think that's just the core focus.
When I think of freedom of purpose, I do think of kind of retirement, right? Like I've got out of the rat race. I'm at a point in life where all of the investments are paying dividends, or they're paying, what I need to sustain life, and even extra, so that it's perpetual, it's continuing to grow. But I also think the perspective should include, if you're a business owner and maybe your purpose, you've been a business owner for 20 years and you've established a business, systems are in place, processes are working, and now your purpose is helping people elevate their careers, right? And so that person has to have financial freedom. They've got to have enough money that's generating that they're not worried about it, so they can deploy their energy to helping other people in their organization grow as well. For them, it is time to do that, which means they've delegated. It is money to do that, which means the revenue is flowing the right way and expenses are flowing the right way, so they can invest in their people. It's not just retirement, right? That's a big one. For most investors, that's it. But it is finding, how am I going to fulfill my purpose with, the things that I've been entrusted with as a steward of, time and money and other things.
Let's say someone's listening and they are working those 2 jobs, because that's how they're making ends meet and getting through the month, right? Where's the hope, right? Some of the great stories of America is when, you had immigrants come over and they started like that. I mean, it was hard work. And I think it's important to understand that this is a lifelong pursuit. This isn't something that's just a quick make it and you're done scheme. It's how do we start setting up and being consistent at doing the right things and the right mentality to change and improve over time. I applaud those that are going to and making it work, because they're taking responsibility, right?
Yep.
But going from there, it's you got to save more than you earn, or more than you spend, right? Even if it's one avenue or passive income, whether it's a rent or lending money and earning interest on it, and just having that grow over time, that's significant until you can And even if you had enough passive income to cover up those 2 jobs, you don't have to quit the 2 jobs. It'll just give you more resources to continue to funnel into that can grow.
But that is the hope, right?
Yeah.
The return, even if it's small, that is the hope. I had a gentleman ask me a couple weeks ago, I've got $5,000. How can I go double it? And I thought, doubling $5,000 could be easy, could be hard, right? You could throw it into the stock market and may as well put it on black, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point that I'm making is, if you found a way to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, right? And you're throwing $200 a month at some investment opportunity and you're getting a return in a year, well, great. You've found a vehicle that works, right? Now you got to find a way to magnify it, or find a second one that does the same thing. And I think that is the hope. It's when that return starts coming in and you feel a little bit of, the pressure alleviated because it's working. It's coming back. Now, how do I magnify it? How do I get it bigger? And the grind, I wouldn't dare rob anybody of that grind, right?
No.
It makes that return so much sweeter when it happens.
Well, it's kind of like journey, not destination, right? If you have the grit to work 2 jobs and you're grinding and going through that difficult process, you can definitely find ways to expand your resources and investment opportunities, and it's a huge game changer, I think, overall.
What about the concept of going back to you're not alone? And we've all struggled. I've lost everything, and I've done it a couple times throughout my life and had to start from literally, can you have a negative value? Right? You start a number of times, but I think when you realize that you don't have to do it alone, and if you take something that's important to you and then bring other people and involve others in that endeavor, things just start changing. I would say that hope magnifies as more people are involved with it. Jason, if someone came up to you and said, look, I am struggling, I'm going through all of these things, would you mentor me? Would you be open to helping someone else just think through their problems, or being a sounding board? Or
all the time. I mean, several have done it for me.
Absolutely.
And I've been blessed immensely for it. So yeah, I'd love to do that all day long, Rich, and not worry about income.
I would too. Here's hope to a better future.
Well, that's the beauty of any team, though. Like, we all have skills and we compensate for each other's weaknesses. I think any successful venture has team members that compensate for their weaknesses. That's how it works, and it creates a synergy that's very powerful.
Well, I think a lot of times we get stuck in the rut. We're in the thick of it when you can't see the horizon because you're in the thick of the forest, right? And it's, you just don't know which direction to go. Probably some of the best advice that I've ever received was when I was at one of my low moments. And we'll talk about this in a different podcast, but I was facing, losing everything all over again, and took my wife out to lunch to kind of break the news, right? And she said, it sounds like you need to start a gratitude journal. And I was blown away, but that changed my life. And, I think no matter what circumstances we're in, the first thing that needs to change is our gratitude. Once you start expressing gratitude, there's this weight that is lifted, and then you can start seeing clearly some of the things that you can do to change. And I think being grateful is a huge part of adding to that hope of making it a reality.
Absolutely agree. I mean, you got to maintain perspective, right?
What is achieving freedom of purpose, and why is that important? If I can do something to help someone else, accomplish or do what's important to them, to me, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning, and that's what gets me excited. And some of the levers that I can help pull is freeing up someone's time and putting them resources to work so they can focus on what truly matters most in their life. I don't know about any of you guys, but I think we'd all be more than willing, if anyone out there is interested, just sharing their story. I would love to hear your story and what your struggles are, and everyone in the community would be more than willing to help think through that, and just know that you're not alone.
One of our core principles is authenticity. And when you are authentic, James, you mentioned when you have the right team that can complement one another, it means you're authentic to who you are, and you take responsibility for what you're not good at, and you lean on your counterpart for that. And so, Rich, I love, Rich, how you've reached out to people and told them, you're not alone. There's a whole group of people out there that have been in the trench, are in the trench, looking to get in the trench, that are looking for support and help from others. And there's this whole world out here. And I think part of that podcast, or part of this podcast, is to help provide some of that direction, whether it's down our avenues or not. It doesn't, that's a byproduct of helping people.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's truly about what achieving freedom of purpose is. Our mission is to help those that we work with, partners, investors alike, achieve what's important to them.
Well, employees too. I think of you, Rich, like for me, and your support to help me achieve freedom of purpose. It's, racing for the Ironmans this year for the Idaho Youth Ranch and doing things, not just at work, but in my personal life that support what I'm doing. It's just a huge way that I think that you embody that true mission of helping us achieve freedom of purpose. And it's not just through investing, it's everything else too. So
I love that.
It's very impactful.
What's the one thing you would tell the audience about how to achieve their freedom of purpose? Just in closing, just the final thought.
Lean into it. When you know what your purpose is, lean into it. The blessings will flow into your life when you are chasing and pursuing what you were meant to do.
Yeah.
And it is amazing to me how doors open. And it's not magic, it's not voodoo, it's none of that. It's just your intentional effort and drive to achieving what you were called to do. And when you do that, and when you're grateful, and when you have the right people around you, and when you are pursuing the right things, it is amazing how it manifests itself. And your happiness scale just off the scale.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
I would also add, this is our next episode, I think, is embracing uncertainty. You have to embrace that fear and that change. Otherwise, you'll just sit in the same place. You have to embrace fear. You have to take action. Decisive. It has to be smart and do your due diligence and everything. But if you don't make any change, nothing's going to change, right?
In our society, we have to have money to operate, right? To live. But having, even if you had all the money in the world, without purpose, it's just so empty. And you don't have to have money to have purpose. And that's not what we're saying, or at least that's not what I'm saying. It's about adding purpose to everything that you're doing so that life becomes so much more meaningful. And when you can do that with others, to me, that's really what is achieving freedom of purpose. And as an epic investor, it's accessible. It's not as hard as it sounds. And that's why we're here. So our entire series is going to be focused on helping the epic investor truly achieve their freedom of purpose. For any of you listening, if you have stories, feel free to reach out. You can, we'll give our contact information down below, but I would love to hear your stories. I'd love to understand what you're called to do and how you're achieving that, or even the struggles. What's the roadblocks in your way? And let's get the community working together, because you are not alone. We're excited to do this together with you.